You're listening to the Life After Gambling podcast, the show where we share real-life experiences, stories and insights of addiction and recovery. Join us as we speak to those who have walked this path before, delving deep into the many different experiences of recovery.
Welcome to the Life After Gambling podcast. I'm Steve, and on today's show, we're joined by Ben. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No, the pleasure is all ours. It's really great that you can join us today. The purpose of today's show is, again, hearing from yourself, Ben, and talking about your recovery. So thank you for joining us. Is the word recovery and in recovery something that you relate to? I'm very conscious that people want we want people to use the words that are comfortable for them. So what sort of words do you use if you're talking about this?
Yeah, so for me, I do use recovery. That's something as I would describe myself as is being in recovery. I know some people would describe themselves still as a gambling addict, or they're that for life, but I like to really separate that up as a success of actually I'm no longer actively gambling and I'm in recovery from a gambling addiction. So yeah, that's something that I use for myself.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think that's really important, the fact that we can all use the words that we want to use, whether that's someone like you said who identifies as maybe a particular phrase. I think that's important. So, firstly, thank you for sharing that. So you're someone who is in recovery. When did your recovery start?
So my recovery started in August of 2020, and it was almost thrust upon myself that still at that time I was as disillusioned that I didn't have a problem. I'm going to get this big win. I'm going to solve all of my issues. So my gambling was a 14-year period. Which started off as just going into a casino at the age of 17. And fast forward 14 years later, I'd literally lost everything. And part of that was committing fraud by abuse of position. Ultimately, I'd won a very large amount of money, which could have replaced all of the fraud and, really, really got me out of a hole. And the day after winning that money, I'd lost the entire amount and lost a lot more money. And I thought to myself, I've got no escape. If I can't walk away with this amount of money, if I can't see reason, I've got a problem here. I really do have a problem. So recovery started for me by handing myself into the police. That was the start of my recovery. I saw that as a way out of gambling, of breaking the chains.
So it's just how like that sort of all come about is, really, really interesting, that the fact that you have kind of come to that realization after such a long period of time. Had you tried to sort of access any support or maybe start your recovery prior to then, or was that like the right, no, this is it moment?
So that was definitely a this is it moment. I think before I did try and attempt recovery many, many times, but the turning point was actually that this time it was for me. I wanted to do it. The many times before it was appeasing a partner, for example, who said, I think you may have a problem. Do you want to get help? So I did reach out to the National Gambling Helpline and had access to localized counselling support. Sometimes I'd make excuses, not go, I'm working late, etc. But that's because I didn't feel it in myself during those times when I attempted to start recovery. But my mindset at this point in time was, I need to stop this, or it's literally going to kill me. These were the two options I had. So I chose recovery, thankfully.
And you mentioned there, like going to the police as right at the start of your recovery. How were you feeling at that time?
Absolutely petrified. I ummed and ahed. I was thinking, do I do this? Do I not? I'd almost catastrophically thought of all the endings possible. I'm going to lose the house. I'm going to lose my career. going to lose my partner. You know, all of these worst case scenarios were going through my head, and it was, do I, don't I, do I, what's people going to think of me, the shame, the guilt, everything that's attached to it. And I just had to do it at a precise moment where my mindset was, this is the right thing to do. This is your get out. This is your escape. And I had that thought, and I just did it. I just handed myself in, which was nerve wracking. And naively, I've never been in trouble with the police in my life. So I thought to myself, I was going to walk in, get arrested there and then, get sent, you know, to a cell or taken away in remand or something. And that was it. And my experience was so different, where they said, okay, thank you very much for letting us know. You can go. And I so lost coming out of there. I was lost, confused, and I really didn't know the next steps to take. I thought, well, what do I do now?
What did you do now? What happened next? So that's really interesting, because you've gone in there, and like you've said, you've got that mindset of, no, this is the way forward. You've gone in there and also have kind of a predetermined outcome of, right, this is what's going to happen to me. And the complete opposite has happened. And like you said, you kind of left there feeling lost. So what happened next? How?
Yeah, it completely threw me, because I thought that that was going to be clarity. I wouldn't have to face up to anyone. The police would then approach friends, family, work, etc., and say, actually, this is what's happened. Ben's handed himself in. But when they let me out, I thought, I've got to now go and explain all of this to people, because at some point I will get arrested. There will be an investigation. There will be a court case. So again, I drove round for, it must have been hours, driving around thinking, how do I approach this? Went home, told my partner at the time exactly, you know, this is what's been happening, this is what's going on. They left, and we've sort of never spoken to this day. Told family and friends, who were just completely shocked. You know, quite a lot of friends were horrified, and it reinforced this guilt, stigma, this not only self-loathing, but actually everyone hates me. You know, people blocking me on social media, the rejection and things. And I thought, right, okay, this is awful. You know, this is really, really terrible. I declared myself bankrupt and lost where I was living, as well as losing my career. So on the Monday, I'd started a new job and everything was great. And literally by that Friday, I'd lost everything. So I was feeling pretty low. And I took the decision at that time, as a form of escape, to try and take my life twice,
Right.
just to really get into the mindset of where I was at. That was due to the self-hatred that I had for myself, and not really understanding how I'd got myself into this position. I think that was a huge reality check of, how have I got here? Because to that point, I was so disillusioned that everything was going to be okay and I'm going to get out of this. That was the narrative I was telling myself. So my whole world just fell apart, literally.
And what what happened in those sort of next steps? Did you reach out for any additional support? I know you said there seems to be like that lack of awareness and understanding from those closest to you, but did you reach out to anyone sort of wider than that?
Yeah, so I Googled, sort of, you know, where can I get help, help and support, and the National Gambling Helpline came up. So I made a call to the National Gambling Helpline, and they were absolutely phenomenal. The person that I spoke to on there really showed me empathy, understanding, said, you know, everything's going to be okay. They reassured me that right now you're going through a bit of a tough time, but you can achieve recovery. It's possible. I come off that call feeling a little bit elated, but still cautious of, actually, you know, what am I going to do with life? Where do I turn? Within 24 hours following that, GamCare had provided me with a assessment call.
Okay.
And then 24 hours after that, I was having a one-to-one session in therapy. So from calling the National Gambling Helpline, 48 hours later, I'd had my assessment and having my first session with the most amazing practitioner, what they call them at GamCare, took on a lot more than just my gambling. I was experiencing the magnitude of loss, financial difficulty, criminal justice, stress and anxiety, obviously high risk presenting as well, of, you know, sort of suicidal ideations. And they were just phenomenal, not only in the sessions, but out of session, emails, check-ins, calls, and referring on as well to other agencies. So, my doctor's surgery called me on a referral of the back of what GamCare had done. And I know I did give consent to that, just to, welfare check, which then opened the pathway of medication support. Do I need any more counselling? So, yeah, for making that one call, that was the first door into recovery for me.
And during those sessions, did you go over things such as like barriers and blockers to sort of prevent you from gambling? And is that something that kind of you put in place as well?
Yeah, so on the first session, we talked about GamStop, Gamban, Moses, back to casino sense, bingo sense, because my whole broad of gambling covered sort of
Oh,
everything,
okay.
which is why I thought, you know what? I always use the analogy, and this is what my practitioner actually said to me. When you go to bed at night, you lock the doors and windows to keep everything out. And that's the way you need to do it with gambling, because you are so experiencing gambling related harm to a high level. You need to lock all the doors and windows and don't leave any cracks so that it can creep back in. And I did that immediately, straight after that first call. I just logged onto everything, blocked everything, and put it all in place, which massively helped because I had no way of physically gambling.
And
Another bit of advice that they give me, just to sort of rule out on the the balance of it, was to give my finances over to somebody else.
right.
So remove your ability to gamble, but also remove your access to gambling, which take away the money, and that really helped. That really helped, and that's something I don't overly have control of now. I do have a bank account, but other people manage and dip in, but that keeps me safe on sort of a day-to-day basis.
And is that like a conversation that you had to have with like a friend or a loved one for them to take control over your finances?
Yeah, so it was with family, and they were more than happy at the time to do it to keep me safe. I think they could see the fragile state I was in, and it was almost a plea of desperation, like take this from me. It wasn't almost a can you. It was have that. I don't want it anymore. I don't want any temptation. But they were more than willing to do it at the time.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And you mentioned about the sessions. How long or how many sort of sessions? How long did that last for? How long did they go on for?
So I had 12 sessions, and during those 12 sessions, got access, like I said, to other support. We discussed everything from sort of the drama triangle, day-to-day life, how am I coping, how am I dealing with urges, is there specific times within a day where I'm noticing a spike, what activities can I start to reincorporate into. So yeah, it was really was sort of quite broad, and I was nervous as the last session was sort of coming up to the end, because I thought, right, okay, now this is ending, I'm going into the big wide world on my own. But that wasn't the case. Yeah, that wasn't the case.
There's a couple of things actually, what you've just said that would be nice to pick up on. So, one thing, and there was a number of things, but I'm just going to touch on one of them, was around how you would deal with urges. Is there any particular sort of technique that you adopted that sort of served you well?
Yeah, so mindfulness is great. Getting out for a walk, but not getting out for a walk and not being at one with what's around you. Listen to the noises, taking the colours, really grounding yourself to focus on something else. That massively helped me. But not even have to be a walk. Just sitting there doing yoga, and something as simple as just loading up YouTube, mindfulness technique, yoga routine, exercise, all those sort of things to take me out of that thought process of I need to place a bet, I need to gamble. And it really did work. I did think to myself that actually, this is going to be all the time. These urges are going to be constant all the time. And actually, they're not. I was quite surprised that it was sort of peaks and troughs throughout the day. But yeah, having those on hand, fidget spinners, things to squeeze, things like that really helped me as well. Just to distract me.
And did those urges or have those urges sort of subsided? I know you said you started recovery 2020. So have those urges sort of subsided the more you've gone into your recovery?
Absolutely, and I think, I mean, I could hand on heart say now that I don't this year probably haven't really had an urge to gamble at all. But I think that's why it's so important early to listen to the advice and techniques that you get from, sort of peers or professionals, because that gets ingrained. So that's part of now my daily routine, of practicing mindfulness, doing a journal, doing a gratitude diary, a self-love diary, making sure I get enough exercise, etc., etc. So all these things are so ingrained in my day-to-day life now that that overpasses any urges. So yeah, I don't have any now, which is thankful for.
Oh, nice. And that sounds like you've got a really sort of good routine, something that you have found that's worked well for you, which I think is really, really helpful and really useful. Um, so let's go back to the end of that 12th session, if we can. And I know you said like you were a little bit sort of concerned being the last session, a little bit worried, and then you kind of finished by saying, "But I didn't need to be." What has happened maybe since that 12th session, or what did you go on to sort of do next? Is there any additional support, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so GamCare, my practitioner at GamCare actually said to me, there's a new project starting out. It's a peer aid service being run through Bet No More. Is this something that you're interested in? And for me at that time, I thought, yeah, great. Do you know what? I'll give something a go. Um, I got the details for that, but actually, I sat on those details for about 4 months, because I thought to myself, do I want to be in a room full of other people in recovery talking about gambling? Is that just going to send me backwards? So I didn't actually join a first meeting till sort of 4 months after I got the referral. And a big message that I can send to everyone is it was the best thing that I ever did. Actually, being around like minded individuals who had walked the walk, they're talking the talk, they're in recovery. It inspired that hope, that passion. And similar to me as well, it took away the stigma and the fact that I was the only one going through this. I was the only one dealing with this problem because, you know, suddenly I'm in a room full of people on Zoom who are not judging me. They are showing me true empathy. They're really saying, I can hear you. And each week, Monday and Thursday, when I was attending, they would say, how are you? Yeah, yeah, I'm okay. And they would say, no, how are you really? So I was answering to respond. And that taught me to actually really open up, be honest, share how I was really feeling. And in turn, having that 2 hours, or it's 4 hours twice a week, just to have non-judgmental, safe space and building up connection, was life-changing for me. Yeah, really life-changing.
And do you think the fact that you had like-minded individuals in the room with you helped you to open up and share stuff? I know you said like they'd ask you a couple of times because you said the first time you probably would just say, "Yeah, I'm okay," which I think is a standard response for most of us, right? Um, but do you think that kind of helped having all of the like-minded people in the room with you?
No, absolutely. I remember my first session so vividly. And by the end of my first session with Peer Aid, the group that was in, I told them my entire story, the criminal justice, how I'd ended up where I was, how gambling had started. And my internal thought was everyone's going to be sort of, how could you do that? You're a horrible person. But the response I got was, oh, yeah, we know quite a lot of people actually that have been through the criminal justice system due to gambling. What support do you need? How can we help you through this? How are you feeling right now? So those responses to me, one, made me, as I say, feel really safe, but two, made me open up more because I know that people had walked the walk. There was one individual part of that service who had been through the criminal justice system. And for me to sit there and look at them and go, wow, look at the job you're doing. Look at how far you've come. You've got a big smile on your face. You're happy. I can get there too. So yeah, life changing.
Yeah, that's inspirational, isn't it? I- Is that something you still do today? Do you still attend those weekly meetings?
Yes, so I now attend them as a trained peer supporter. So I attended them as a peer for 12 months religiously, sort of twice a week. And then I was approached by the service manager there and said, would you like to become a peer supporter? Again, this was another life-changing moment for me. I come off that call absolutely crying because for the first time since I handed myself into the police, somebody had seen beyond me being in recovery. They'd seen beyond, this label above my head. And it was you can do great things, you can help other people, you can achieve what you want to achieve, and saw me for me. So I did come off there, had a little cry, I was a little bit soppy, and yeah, fully accepted that role, went through the training, which was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, very closely associated with Bet No More and Peer Aid. I will facilitate those meetings. Um, and just seeing the progression in others grounds me in my recovery. Seeing different people at different stages of recovery, really reminds me of my past and where I've been, but not in a negative connotation. It's more of a, actually, you can get through this. I want to pass on that sort of ripple effect, what was passed on to me. So yeah, I really, really enjoy them. My time doesn't allow me to join twice a week now because I'm so busy. But I very regular, at least once a week, will get on. And from that as well, we've built up a community of, we meet up 2-3 times a year. We will all go out for a meal. And it just brings people out of isolation, brings people together, forges friendships. And you just know that someone's got your back. And I just think that service is fantastic.
Oh, that's brilliant. And that's online, is it?
Yeah, online. Online Mondays and Thursdays, sort of twice a week.
Brilliant. And I know you mentioned there, like, you could only attend once a week because you're so busy. What else are you doing in your recovery? What else is going on? Why is Ben so busy?
So I literally went from this person who was lost, had no idea what I was doing, joined Peer Aid, and then boom. So I went out and thought to myself, I can potentially make a career out of this. I can see an opportunity to help so many others, but I didn't know what that looked like. So yeah, I sort of infiltrated everywhere I could, forge connections with people like yourself, and through that, I've trained to become a recovery coach with Reframe Coaching, which is again absolutely fantastic for the Life After Gambling program. I applied to be on the Lived Experience Council for Gamble Aware, so they are the strategic commissioner for Great Britain for all services and providers of, sort of education, treatment, and support and research. And I got the chairmanship of that, and that's looking at things nationally for Gamble Aware at a strategic level. And on the back of that as well, I launched their stigma campaign at Parliament, which was a huge moment to be invited down to do that, as well as getting involved in other sort of public speaking and talk. So really, really proud of that position. I'm part of many research panels and projects at the moment. I'm doing an LGBTQ plus links to gambling related harm, and just about to start on a probation service, chairing the lived experience committee research. So looking at that. So yeah, my time is
Busy.
taken away.
And I mean, I think you just briefly touched on it from our side at Reframe Coaching. We're delighted to have you as a recovery coach, and the work that you've been doing for us is amazing, and I know it's helping a lot of people. So, very quickly, thank you for that.
No, and you know what? Thank you for the opportunity. It's amazing. Again, it's those where people can see you and what you can do for others, like the help that you can provide. And the investment that you put into recovery coaches as Reframe in terms of the training with Recovery Coach Academy is second to none, and that really, really gets you in a good position to get out there, as well as providing sort of supervision, clinical supervisions, all these things that just make you feel safe, secure. Again, with yourself, you've always got someone. If I'm struggling or need help, I can give you a call, always there. And the program itself, from the portal to the delivery, is absolutely fantastic. So it's a credit to you as well.
Oh, brilliant. No, thank you. Really, yeah, really nice words. And that wasn't plugged and planned at all. So thank
No,
you.
it actually wasn't.
But no, it sounds like, you are really, really busy. How, that's great. And how is that having an impact on your recovery? Are there times where you're actually having to say, I've got so much going on? I know you mentioned earlier on the show about, your non-negotiables, if you like, your mindfulness, your gratitude journal, that type of stuff. Is there times where that becomes even more prevalent because you are so busy with different things?
Yeah, so it can become strained at times. So I'm very routined and I plan. But sometimes I have to move the goalpost. If my day is really, really long, I will probably do something at 10 o'clock at night because that's really important to me. And I think the minute we fall into complacency, that's where things can start to go wrong. So regardless of what my day looks like or how busy I am, the fundamentals and cores of everything are always there. So I'll ensure that that's done. Um, and in terms of sort of juggling all these different roles and wearing all these different hats, it's an opportunity to learn. So I always say, what's the teachable moment right now? What can we take from this? What can I gain? I don't like to look at problems. I like to look at solutions. And in fact, what this is doing for me now is, valuable training, insights, development for me, which is only going to stand me in good stead in the future. So, it's building up that resilience. It's making me a better character. It's making me more empathetic. I think I'm an empathetic person anyway. But actually, yeah, I'm really mastering the art at that, I would say, if I don't say so myself.
Yeah, no,
uh,
that's self-awareness is obviously key, isn't it? So that's brilliant. Well, one thing you mentioned there, Ben, is like the core things for you, those must-haves. What are they? So what are your non-negotiables? What do you have to do as part of your routine to help with your sort of self-care?
so for me, I'm always working on a goal, and there will be one big long-term goal, and I break it down. So at the end of the day, before I go to bed, I will go, how have I contributed towards that goal today? How have I put a step forward? Sometimes it's okay for me to have a self-reflection when I do a journal every night and go, I haven't moved forward, but I haven't gone back. So I've just paused. I've just stood still today, but that's okay too,
Yeah.
because I haven't gone back. So I've always got a goal that I'm working on. Journaling, 3 positive things. The gratitude diary gets done before bed as well, because too much we can focus on the negatives of the day, and that can outweigh and change our mindset. So if we just focus on 3 positives of the day, then that's where our mindset gets shifted to. Self-love diary is great. We can be our own worst critics, but we can find 3 things that we love about ourselves. I've managed to do it, and I'm not egotistical at all. But I've managed to do it now for 12 months. At the start, it's quite difficult because you read it back and you think, I'm not used to saying these nice things to myself. But that's helped me gain confidence. That's really helped me gain confidence, and just not being so hard on myself. Not being hard on myself. Every morning when I get up, I will do the mindfulness. So that's included, and exercise as well. So quite a lot of these things were implemented to me. One, yourself doing the mindfulness course was great, but 2, I went through the Epic Restart Foundation program, and that was phenomenal. 1, for building up connection, 2, skills and development, but 3, really implementing what I'd learned. So they run a great workshop, which basically, in a nutshell, is 1% of your day is 8 minutes, and that's how you can build new habits, and put them into place. So for me, this started over a year ago. I needed to drink more water, I needed to get more exercise, etc. So it started off with 8 minutes a day. Let's take exercise, for example. I've now got a personal trainer, which I'm doing twice a week. I've got an exercise routine. I'm drinking at least minimum 3 litres of water a day. And that all started from 8 minutes, and having that grounded in. So yeah, another great charity and organisation that are doing great work in sort of their aftercare.
Oh, brilliant. No, thank you for sharing that. So your recovery's 3 years now. What
Yes.
is the one thing that you've found in your recovery that has made the biggest impact to you?
To me, it's connection with like-minded individuals. That's probably the biggest thing for me, because I wouldn't be where I am now without forging those connections. So I think back to everything I've spoken about in terms of, you know, peer aid and that hope. So from that, I trained to be a counsellor. So I've got 1 year to go to qualify as a counsellor. So that forged connections in sort of, doing the level 2, level 3, and first year level 4. Um, Connections in the recovery space, is absolutely massive. I know now I've got a phone contact book full of people who, if I picked up the phone and said, I need a bit of help, I'm not sure about this, they would help straight away. So to me, that's been invaluable to say, well, not to say, but to push me along on my journey. I wouldn't have been able to do it without everyone that I've met who gave me that bit of hope and that can-do attitude.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think finding finding your tribe, finding the people that support you, I think is, so fundamental and really, really does help. But on that, I do want to ask, have you had any situations, circumstances, experiences where you've connected maybe with the wrong people? Obviously, I don't want you to name people, but like negative experiences and how sort of you've dealt with that within recovery.
Yeah, so I try not to look at anything in a negative way.
Yeah,
um, and I don't ever look at myself as failing or things like that. I always say failing or fail stands for first attempt in learning. So I always, as I said, look for the what's the learning opportunity here? How can I develop? I have forged connections. I got into a relationship in recovery, and that was quite a big thing for me. But actually, in turn, that turned out to be I wasn't an equal in that. I felt lesser of a person because of my past, what I'd done, my potential future of maybe going into prison. So that wasn't right, but I clung on to it because it was a bit of attention, and I was used to so much rejection. So from that, I just learned self-worth, and self-belief is, much more important than what anyone else can give me.
yeah,
That shifted me from a people pleaser sort of mindset. Um, Other connections that I forged is, people that actively still are gambling, and I know that they aren't going to bring anything positive to my recovery. So I had to sort of cut them off, which was not a nice thing to do. But again, it just taught me the importance of me and how much recovery is important to my life. So yeah, I think times can be hard, and you have to have a lot of reflection on, is this a meaningful connection? How much money am I depositing into the emotional bank account, and how much are other people withdrawing, and what am I getting back? So yeah, I do actually do a thing called a role compass every Sunday, and I look at myself as more than somebody in recovery. I am a brother, a son, a grandson, a friend, a peer supporter, and actually I work out where I'm not giving to people and where people are not giving to me, and that will then formulate my week to go, okay, maybe I need to call my nan this week, maybe I need to call my dad and catch up, etc. So yeah, that's
I,
how I keep meaningful connections, I guess.
yeah, and I think there's something really nice about what you've just said there about who I am, because personally, I think in society we're really quick to label people, and I think it can be really helpful in certain circumstances, but they can also be quite restrictive. So you get labelled as, we've talked about at the very start, like you get labelled as someone in recovery, but you forget about all of the other labels that you also hold. Like you said, I'm a human being, I'm a person, I'm, whatever it might be. Do you know what I mean? There's so many different. There's so much more to us, and I think this is another one of the reasons why we're really keen to sort of do this podcast to show that, yes, of course, we'll talk about recovery and the various aspects of recovery, but also there's a human being on, two human beings on the show. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's really nice what you've just said there.
Thank you.
And what is one thing that you've learned about yourself through recovery? So maybe something that, maybe you didn't know prior. You've entered into recovery, and all of a sudden, this is, well, I didn't know that about me, or didn't know that that existed.
For me, I honestly had like this epiphany, and this is only quite recent actually, of just how much of a driven individual I am. I am determined, and if I want something, I'm gonna go and get it. That's something I've learned recently. But I guess about myself as well is that actually I'm not a horrible person. So when I at the start of recovery for me, there was a lot of that self hatred, that self talk to myself, telling me actually you're evil, you're horrible, because that's what people around me were telling me. But
Right.
as I've sort of worked on myself and explored that further, yeah, I've just come to the conclusion that actually I am a really nice guy. I am a lovely person. I'm very friendly. I'm helpful. I'll go to the end of the world for anybody in dire need. And actually, gambling made me do some not very nice things. But that wasn't me.
Yeah.
That was a change. So yeah, the biggest thing is self-love. And actually, I'm a nice guy. I'm not what gambling made me.
Yeah, I think that's so really nice to hear. And I think there's one thing like, you know, challenging those limiting beliefs, because I think, like you've said, people were telling me I'm not a nice person, I'm not a nice person. We kind of see that as that limiting belief, and people saying it kind of reinforces it. So I think this is where like the connection thing comes in, doesn't it? And seeing the work that you're doing and challenging those limiting beliefs, like, actually, do you know what? I'm a lot more than that. I'm worth a lot more than that. I'm a lot more I'm better than that. Just again, once we challenge those limiting beliefs, we start to then create new ones, and the ones that actually serve a purpose. And I think you've just highlighted that beautifully, really, really well. Um, and that kind of learning more about you there, Ben, kind of brings us on to the next part of the show, which is kind of our sort of this or that round, which what we wanted to do is just to create, again, learning more about you, something maybe a little bit silly, but we are humans. So I'm going to share two opposites, or two different options, and you're going to select one, and we'll see how we go. So the first one is pasta or pizza.
Pizza always.
On what topping?
Pepperoni, meat feast for
I'm
me.
I'm
Sorry
with.
to all the vegans out there, but
This is it. You're sharing your opinion. It's fine. You share what you like. I'm with you on the meat feast, by the way. Um, Savory or sweet?
savory, definitely. If I had a choice for cakes, get me in a pasty shop, pork pie, cheese and bacon turnovers. Honestly, the lot. I'm gonna kill his heel.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. If we're ever out for a family meal and we go for the two courses, I'll always go starter and main,
Absolutely.
where, I think my daughter would always go main and dessert. So I'm much more the savory side as well. Summer or winter?
Oh, now that's a question. Winter, which is going to be bizarre to most people, but for me, I can throw on a baggy jumper. I haven't got to worry about if I've eaten too much of my savoury snacks. It's all right. I can literally sort of cover myself over, and it's just nice and cozy.
You've linked that in really well there, Ben.
Yeah.
Vacation or staycation?
Oh, vacation. I haven't been on one since 2016, so it's up there. I would always say sort of vacation, but
Yeah,
staycations have happened recently, but it's on the agenda for next year.
nice. And the night and the favorite place have you've been to? What's the nicest?
Oh gosh, it has to probably be Texas.
Oh
I've got
wow.
family. I've got family that live over in Texas, and I was blown away by my expectation of Texas was saloons, cowboy hats. Really, really this preconceived idea. But no, yeah, it was just amazing.
That sounds good. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset on the beach,
Yeah.
best feeling.
Apple or Android?
Oh, Apple, absolute Apple. I can't use anything but.
It's funny, isn't it? Once you get really familiar with a piece of tech, trying to switch, it's hard, isn't it? It's difficult.
Yeah,
Um,
family have other phones, and they're like, "Can you sort this?" I'm like, "No,
I've got
no,
no,
that's like an alien thing to me."
yeah, I've got no idea. A bit more deeper now. This one, being known as a kind person or being known as a resourceful person.
Oh, I would say, oh, kind person. Yeah, I'd say kind person. I'm very resourceful. I must admit, I'm very resourceful, but I think people can be resourceful and not very nice. So it's better to be kind and then resourceful.
Okay. Um, Being better at writing or being better at speaking.
Well, I'll let the listeners of this be the judge of that. I would say speaking. Yeah, I'd say I'm better at articulating things and writing down.
And then the final one, would you rather be at the forefront or would you rather be helping in the background?
Oh, oh, forefront.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely up there as a leader. Every job I've ever had, I've ended up becoming the manager of somewhere in a very short space of time. So I think it's ingrained in me.
Hence the chairperson.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
straight
yeah.
to the top.
I
I was
love it.
elected to that position. I must put on record.
Yeah, but again, people can see that in you. Do you know what I mean? I think that shines through. So that was the last one. So thank you for doing that. Again, just wanted to bring a bit more light-hearted, a bit more about you, to show that we are obviously human beings. And then finally, we've got one final message, and the final question is, what would you like to say to the younger version of Ben? Maybe the version of Ben, and this is up to you how you want to do it. So it could be the younger version of Ben as a child. It could be the younger version of Ben who is still gambling. It could be the younger version of Ben who has maybe started recovery. But what message would you like to say to that version of Ben?
I would say don't keep things to yourself. Speak out. Be honest about how you're feeling, and just get support. Yeah, just get support. I've always kept things to myself. I've always been very much everything's okay. Yeah, everything's okay. When deep down it's really, really hasn't been okay. And the first time where I've been honest, open, and reached out for help, you can see how much my life has changed in doing that. So, and I would go from a child, because I used to weigh 21 stone, believe it or not, and that came from childhood overeating. And then there was an eating disorder the other way, sort of bulimia, to lose the weight, and then alcohol and drugs, and then gambling. So there's always been something which underlying is me suppressing, not talking, not opening up. And it's been one thing to the other. And I can hand on heart say, from opening up, speaking out and talking, I'm living a life free from any unhealthy sort of addiction. So that would be the biggest advice, yeah, to my younger self.
Oh, that's amazing. And look, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your experience of being in recovery. I found it really inspirational, and I'm pretty sure our listeners and people watching will find it equally. What we're going to do is we'll drop in the show notes a link to all of the organizations that you've mentioned, and we'll also link to some of the activities that you've also mentioned as well, so people can, if they want to check it out, they can go and maybe try some of the stuff that that you've done in your recovery, Ben. So once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Obviously, we wish you all the continued success that you're having, and hopefully your recovery continues in the same vein, mate. So yeah, thank you.
No, amazing. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Life After Gambling podcast. Keep up to date with all the latest by connecting with us at reframecoaching.org.uk. Join us again next time as we bring you more real life experiences of recovery.